What's going on, everyone? This is Tommy from the Ravens Creek Study. We're looking at Systematic Theology 1, still going through kind of the prolegomena, the introduction, and we're looking today at the two kinds of righteousness. Now, we summed up looking at orthopraxy and orthopraxy, orthopraxy and orthodoxy, essentially what you believe in and what you practice, and how the two are very intertwined with one another. And we discussed a little bit about how the church fathers didn't always add up to this, and so we need to be careful. Not to say that we don't need to read the church fathers or that we should just abandon all hope, but we need to be careful and at least have that awareness that not everybody's perfect. And it's the same thing here. We're looking at two kinds of righteousness. Now, this is a Martin Luther teaching, and if you have any book by Martin Luther that I guess any book that would have a compilation of Martin Luther's studies or some of the things that they would see as some of the most basic, most necessary teachings of Martin Luther, most likely this is going to be within that volume. He taught that there are two kinds of righteousness, and what he means by this is that you essentially have two dimensions, and I'm sure you've heard this before, you've not heard it called two kinds of righteousness, maybe. Essentially there's the vertical plane, so you think of our relationship with God, the up and down, right? And then there's also the horizontal, that we have a relationship with each other. Often the vertical relationship is what people think of as, quote, spiritual or devotion, that we have our devotion to God, and then we treat people lovingly, kindly, compassionately, fill in the blank with whatever words. These two kinds of righteousness cannot be separated. You cannot be righteous unto God and then unrighteous to others, and that's really the point. And I've heard others who would say, you see how it makes a cross? There's a vertical and a horizontal. But really the whole point of orthodoxy, orthopraxy, and the interweaving here is that what you believe is going to affect the way that you live at some level, in some way. To, quote, be perfect and to love our enemies demands that we have a certain kind of action. A detailed analysis of what it doctrinally means to be perfect or to love your enemies doesn't actually mean that you're loving your enemies or being perfect. It doesn't mean that you're actually able to perform these just because you have the right doctrine. And it doesn't mean that you have the ability to. And so the righteousness from God is something that we gain in salvation. We see God, and He changes us. Our hearts have been circumcised, and therefore all of our relationships are changed. And that's really what, I think that's really what Martin Luther was trying to hit at. But I think we sometimes forget this, that it's not a matter of, well, if we just have our doctrine right, then we'll go ahead and we'll practice the right things. Or if we all start to conform to what Christ-likeness looks like, then we'll have good doctrine. No, it still starts and ends with the whole point that this is of Him, from Him, to Him. It's still a matter of our hearts have to be circumcised. We have to have that inward changing. And the two kinds of righteousness, let's not forget, righteousness is not something that we simply perform. Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. There's something here that's nuanced. It's more than just a matter of your actions being right because you did the right thing. There's something beyond that, but that's all I have for here. So, in the next section, we're going to start looking at sources for theology. If we're talking about theology as the study of God and His relationships with all things, that's a very personal study. So, what exactly are the sources? We would obviously say the Bible, but what are some of the ways that we can come to know God better? What are some of the ways that we can come to learn the way that God interacts with us, with others, with the creation, with all things? So, until next time, grace and peace to you in Christ.